On a freezing winter morning in Montana, an elderly woman discovered two frozen bikers lying helpless on the roadside. What she did next shocked everyone in town and became a story of true kindness and courage. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The snow fell thick and steady over the quiet town of Redwood, Montana. It was the kind of morning when even the bravest souls preferred to stay by the fire. But for Eleanor Briggs, a 72-year-old widow who lived on the outskirts of town, life didn't stop for the weather. Wrapped in her thick wool coat and gripping her old walking stick, she trudged along the snow-covered path toward the small grocery store 2 miles away. Eleanor had always been tough. Years of living alone in the mountains had made her resilient. Her husband, Frank, had passed away nearly a decade ago, but she still spoke to him whenever she was out in the cold. "You'd be laughing at me now, Frank," she muttered, her breath forming small clouds in the air. "Out here fighting the snow like an old fool." The road curved through the forest where the tall pines stood like silent guardians. Everything was peaceful until she noticed something odd ahead. 2 motorcycles were half buried in the snow near the edge of the road. Their chrome parts glimmered faintly beneath a thick layer of frost. Eleanor frowned. Out here in this freezing weather, nobody should have been riding bikes. As she got closer, her heart started to pound. 2 men, both wearing leather jackets with a skull-wing emblem that read Hell's Angels, were lying motionless beside their bikes. Their faces were pale, their beards frozen stiff. For a moment, Eleanor froze too, fear creeping up her spine. Everyone in town had heard stories about biker gangs, rough men who rode through towns and stirred up trouble. But these men didn't look threatening now. They looked helpless. Eleanor took a deep breath and moved closer. "Oh, Lord," she whispered. "Please don't be dead." She knelt beside one of them, her knees pressing into the snow. When she touched his arm, it was like ice. But then she felt the faintest twitch, a pulse, weak but there. "Hang on, son," she said, pulling her scarf from around her neck. "You're not dying out here today." It took every ounce of strength she had to drag the men toward her old pickup truck parked a few yards away. She didn't care that her back screamed with pain or that her hands were going numb. All she could think about was getting them warm. She managed to get them inside, started the engine, and turned the heater on full blast. As the truck rumbled down the snowy road toward town, Eleanor glanced at the 2 unconscious bikers. Their tattoos and jackets screamed danger, but to her, they were just 2 souls in need of saving. "Frank," she whispered softly, "guess we got company tonight." The snow continued to fall, but inside that old truck, a spark of life had begun to return. Eleanor didn't know who these men were or what trouble they might bring, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't just leave them behind. Little did she know, her simple act of kindness was about to shake the whole town. Cabin at the edge of Redwood, the storm had grown fierce. Snow whipped against the windshield, and the heater groaned from the strain. She parked the truck, ran to open her front door, and hurried back to help the 2 bikers inside. It wasn't easy. Her hands ached, her legs trembled, but she refused to give up. Inside, the warmth of the crackling fireplace met the bitter cold of the night. Eleanor dragged the men closer to the fire, removed their frozen jackets, and wrapped them in thick wool blankets. She boiled water for tea and filled 2 old hot water bottles, placing them against their sides. The room began to thaw, slowly, painfully, but life flickered back into the strangers. One of them groaned, his eyelids fluttering open. His voice was hoarse. Where are we?" "You're safe," Eleanor said gently. "You 2 were half frozen on the side of the road. I brought you here." The man blinked, confused, then glanced at his friend lying beside him. "You saved us?" "That's right," she replied, stirring a cup of tea. "Drink this. You need warmth more than questions right now." Hours passed before both men were conscious enough to talk. They introduced themselves as Reed and Cole, members of a motorcycle club traveling cross-country. Their bikes had broken down in the storm, and they'd gotten stranded in the cold. Reed, the older one, looked at Eleanor with disbelief. Ma'am, most folks wouldn't even stop for us. Why did you? Eleanor smiled faintly. Because my husband would have done the same. Cold don't care who you are, it'll take anyone. That night, she gave them her spare quilts and made a pot of chicken soup. The two tough-looking bikers, men covered in tattoos and leather, sat quietly at her kitchen table, humbled. They listened to her stories about Frank, the hard winters, and the years she'd spent alone after losing him. For the first time in a long while, laughter filled her cabin again. The next morning, word spread quickly through town. Someone had seen Eleanor's truck on the road during the storm, and by noon, Sheriff Harlan showed up to check on her. When he stepped inside and saw the two infamous bikers sitting peacefully by her fire, he froze. "Ma'am, do you know who these fellas are?" "I know they're human," she said firmly. "And they were dying." The sheriff sighed, tipped his hat, and left without another word. A few days later, when the storm cleared, Reed and Cole had fixed their bikes and were ready to leave. Before going, Reed handed Eleanor a small silver pin shaped like wings, their club's emblem. "You've got more heart than anyone we've ever met," he said. "If you ever need us, just show this." Months passed, and the town never stopped talking about the old lady who saved two Hell's Angels from freezing to death. But Eleanor didn't care for gossip. She just smiled every time she saw that silver pin on her mantle glinting in the sunlight, proof that kindness could melt even the coldest hearts.